Cool. Yeah. So today, we'll spend some time speaking of how to use generative AI to create effective social media content. And in the presentation today, I'd like to actually walk through a couple of lessons that that people can actually learn about our own experience of building an AI-powered generative AI tool and the work we're doing with our customers. Want to focus on a couple of things: how to choose an AI tool for content creation and what are the things to keep in mind. Then how to integrate AI in an organization's workflow, and more importantly, how to anchor its use in a very tangible need. Where we'll also be looking at a quick case study from our work with PR Newswire and Cision. And then dive a little bit under the hood to provide a couple of pointers in terms of how an AI tool actually works and things to be aware of. And then we'll go into Q&A. But first of all, my name is Tudor. I'm a co-founder at Socia. I've been working in the technology space for more than 10 years now. I first founded a social network for politics, so I've spent a lot of time in the social networking space. And I did a PhD in language modeling on presidential speeches, studying how language is written in large organizations. And I'm now a co-founder at Socia. We're a New York-based tech startup that helps organizations and companies drive organic engagement by stimulating user-generated content from their communities, whether these are consumers or employees, supporters, or partners. So why am I speaking about AI? Well, aside from the work that I did in my PhD, where I was studying language models, when I finished my PhD, I actually Googled AI for speech writing because I was really interested what work was out there, and that's how I met my co-founder. I had stumbled upon these articles about an algorithm that had been written all the way back in 2016 that was automating the writing of political speeches. This was way before generative AI was actually a thing. So I started speaking to Valentin, who now became my co-founder, and then we decided to launch Socia together. So my co-founder and I have actually been in this space for quite a while and have seen the different iterations of generative AI, and also have been spearheading adoption of AI into our product ever since the end of 2019 when we launched our first version. Without further ado, I wanted to go straight into how to use an AI tool for content creation. It's very important to keep in mind here that not all uses of AI for content creation are the same. And I wanted to introduce a really interesting breakdown here between creative text generation, image generation, but then also optimization. What do I mean by creative? That means a user is expecting the AI to help them create something new, which is usually the base of language that then a marketer or a PR person would use to create a whole set of materials around it. And I'll show you an example in a second. Right? Let's say you have a big PR announcement and you want to craft a language that will go into that press release. You could use a tool like ChatGPT or Claude or Writer to actually come up with the ideas that you want to add in that. And you'll probably go through multiple drafts until you get your right version, and then you'll be able to then start using that language in multiple different ways. This is the creative text generation. The same thing with images. Here too, you could use Bing or DALL-E 3 or Midjourney to focus on a very similar pathway, which is I don't have an asset and I want to create it and I want to use it in different ways. So I'm sure many of the people in the audience have already played with creating prompts and generating prompts and so on. The content optimization is actually a little bit different. It focuses more on how do you make sure that the language you've crafted or the images you've created can work in many different circumstances. In our case, the thing that we're focused a lot about is how can the members of a community share on their own social networks posts about a specific initiative, which is less about how do those posts become creative and more around how can you create variations and help optimizations for each social platform. In our case, actually, the gold standard is not creativity. You wouldn't want the language that is written by AI to change the language substantially. It's more around making small optimizations that can ensure that those posts can be much more readily shareable. So there's really different use cases here, and we could break these down also in different types of scenarios. But what's really important here is to really understand what the use case of AI is, rather than thinking that all AI tools for text are the same or all AI tools for image are the same. Going back a little bit, what is our experience in this space, and what have we done so far? So we started our company at the end of 2019. We've been working with more than 700 organizations so far that have used our product to build social shareable content that their communities can use. And we've powered around 800,000 user-generated posts. Our platform has been used by big brands and companies and organizations, including Novavax, Masterclass, Cision, PepsiCo, Ernst & Young, and CVS. We're both in Europe and in the United States. The main product we develop is called a social share toolkit, which is a way for users for companies and brands to suggest draft social posts to their community members that they can then customize and share with their networks. And we're building an alternative to advertising, so a way to generate organic content at scale. And we also help organizations track that engagement. We've had these posts that were shared on different social networks on behalf of these organizations have generated so far an estimated $47 million in earned marketing value. So in developing our AI, we started from a very specific need, which was actually, we noticed something. We noticed that when a social share toolkit has 3 or more posts, right? So let's say you launch a press release, and then if you provide your employees with 3 or more versions of how they can share the same thing, rather than just one post, engagement spikes by around 600%. And we also noticed something else. If the organization also optimizes those posts for the different social networks, so when an employee wants to share on X, they actually see a post that is 280 characters. If they want to share in an Instagram story, they see a horizontal image, like a portrait image rather than a landscape one. Engagement on those posts increases by around 300%. So this, when working with our clients, this was the primary need for this, which is we've noticed that these kind of optimizations generate much more, exponentially more engagement. We also noticed that the marketers don't have the time or the knowledge to do these things. They don't have the time to generate 3 or 5 different variations for how an employee or a customer should share about the post. And they don't have the knowledge to actually understand how to generate an optimized post for Facebook and one for LinkedIn, given that these algorithms change all the time. So it's a very narrow need that drives the use of the very narrow AI that we've built. I think this is important. I think there's a lot of scenarios where organizations and marketers think too broadly of AI, so they have very high expectations of what they're going to do with it. Be like, well, it can help me create amazing content, and then they're let down because the content is not that great, or it can let me optimize, but the results fall somewhere in between. Whereas understanding that there is different ways to build AI for very specific purposes can also inform the choice of, okay, what tool do I need for what exactly? So I wanted to illustrate that by taking a very specific case study. Cision and PR Newswire has 500 sellers globally, and they've realized that if these sellers are actually posting on social media about the products that PR Newswire is launching, they can actually generate a lot of leads, they can generate engagement. So in other words, this is what they would like to see. They would like regular members of the team share about the different products in a way that is super engaging, generates likes, generates reach, generates comments, and so on. And this is where they start. I was speaking about this concept of thinking of AI for very specific purposes, and this is really the example. By the time they come to us, they've already crafted the language in their product launch. You see here a very specific example of the launch of a new product that's called Risk Score. So they're not interested in crafting creative ways of speaking about the product. They literally have the language. What they're interested in is really taking this text and then generating variations optimized for different social networks so that their employees can share different things, and also encourage their employees to customize those in very specific ways, but that keeps the language in mind. Keeps the main language that they wanna share about that particular product. So they add the draft language in our AI, and they generate these variations for each social network. Can see X is a very short post. The LinkedIn is actually longer. Instagram has more emojis and so on. So it's really the optimization side of things that saves them time and helps them generate more shares from their employees, but in a way that keeps in the main message of that product. And then those posts go onto a social share toolkit, as I was saying, which is basically a link that users can access. And then they take a post that they like, they customize it for their networks, and then they share it on their own social media channels in a couple of clicks. The lessons to draw here, which are not necessarily just specific to social, but in general, are make sure that the tool you're using is really adjusted for what you're trying to achieve, and make sure that it's anchored in a real need that you have, which is, I want to generate this much more engagement, and how do I get to that in our case? But there can really be multiple ways of thinking about this. And it may actually be the case that a digital marketer will actually end up using multiple AI products for very small use cases in the full user journey, rather than using one AI for everything that's creative. One of the things that I'm fascinated by is really this dichotomy between software products and then these general AI tools like ChatGPT and so on. My hypothesis is that most software companies will actually end up integrating AI as a way to just build better software. So when this entire craze with ChatGPT started, you heard a lot of people who started encouraging everyone to just become prompt engineers. Everyone should know how to prompt. My take here is actually the other way around, that the people who need to know how to prompt are actually the builders of software tools who will be integrating AI as an infrastructure layer in everything they do. So a digital marketer or an agency owner doesn't need to learn prompts. They actually need to learn what to expect from a tool and how the flows are working. You'll hear a lot of chats about how the interaction between software products and then their underlying AI models. And to make that more understandable, I actually wanted to take you behind the hood in what we're doing, to understand how a startup company that has developed a product for a very specific purpose actually integrates with a large AI model like OpenAI in this case. So here's what happens in our own journey. A marketer comes to in our platform and they input a text content. Then our own algorithm that has seen all of these posts that have been shared and their engagement generates a prediction. It looks at that input text and says, what would a good social post look like for each of these social networks based on this input text? And it takes into account a lot of different variables with that. It then generates a prompt, which is a text prompt, the way you do it manually in ChatGPT, but it generates that automatically, taking into account different variables. And then it sends that to a large language model. In this case, it's OpenAI. But the trend is for software companies to actually use multiple models for different things. Then our platform receives this input back in terms of a post, and it evaluates its quality. It's kind of like a human, where it says, oh, I don't think this is good enough. And then it's kind of like a conversation between one AI algorithm and the other, making sure that the post that is sent back to the marketer is good enough. Then once the post sent back by OpenAI goes through this arbitration process, it's then showed to marketers and they approve it or they regenerate it. Then the marketer approves or regenerates it, it goes to their sharers, and then social tracks that engagement and goes to the next level. The reason why it's important to take these things into account is because you can then better understand what the limitations of the technology is. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Users are surprised when they see that our algorithm works in any language, but it's not really our algorithm. It's OpenAI language capabilities, because we trigger those to actually generate the language itself. But it also has a limitation. You hear a lot of speak about bias and about stereotypes and so on. One of the limitations in generating language and using a big language model is that if you rely on them for the language generation, that triggers all of these other things that the marketer needs to be careful about, which is this language suitable for my purposes and so on. This is actually more of a danger in a creative use of AI than in an optimization, because in case of optimization, we actually really rely on the input text to actually create those optimizations for the different social networks. And another thing to keep in mind here is how the tools are evolving. We've been on an exponential path of growth, so you can absolutely expect that the foundational models become better, which also means that the ways the software companies that you're using for very specific purposes will become better at integrating AI for different purposes. And that's also something to keep in mind as you're thinking in terms of, okay, what tools should I adopt for what purpose and how to do that? Thank you.
Thanks, Tudor. So we have a couple of questions from the audience, if you have further now at the moment to ask them. So
Yep.
first question is, we saw a lot of employee advocacy initiative fail in the past. Do you think AI will bring solution to crack this topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the, I don't think so it's less about the AI here. It's actually more about understanding when people share and how. The employees advocacy tools that are being used by a good part of the big companies right now have a really big limitation, which is they gate employees. The idea here with all of these apps like Sprinkler Social and Post Beyond and so on is that you actually bring employees into a gated environment where you give them what to share and you control their sharing behavior. And that's why these companies usually have 100 or 200 people who end up sharing. Our approach has been you make anyone at the company able to share, but you don't control their experience. Different departments will be sharing in different ways, and they can share without actually logging in. This is actually more in terms of the philosophy of the natural flow of sharing. There's also another thing here. Social sharing is usually an outcome of community building, which is you first need to give a user a reason to share and then make it easy for them to do so. And then how AI can come in is by ensuring the things that were not possible so far, which is offering users a way to share in their own unique way in a couple of clicks, rather than ending up a company with 10,000 employees all posting the same thing. And this is absolutely possible right now. And that's actually the work that we're doing. We first rolled out the AI in the dashboard so that the digital marketers can provide multiple variations that then users can take and then share on their own. But the next step we're working on is ensuring that the digital marketers will be able to select part of the text that never changes. And then the AI would help the users optimize the post around the filler words, as they're called it, the part in the post that don't interfere with the main message, but that make their post personal. So this is the next stage we're going here with it. There are indeed things that the AI can help with, but there's also a matter of the overall premise of where does social sharing come in?
Yeah. There is a second question. Do you think there is any specific use case per industry or specific vertical for social?
Yeah. So where we started was PR and CSR. Those were the first two we started with. PR because companies have a lot of product announcements or really announcements, and they have engaged communities and they want those messages to go out. And then their main goal is to get more traction on those pieces of content. So we started with that because it involves, it preserves an already engaged community that wants to do something because they're proud of it. The second one are CSR campaigns, because people are sharing because they feel they're doing something good. A lot of the big companies, for instance, we work with PepsiCo, they invest a lot of money in making sure that PepsiCo has a positive impact in the world, and then the employees are actually excited to share those. They also do a lot of partnerships. But there's other use cases here that we've started seeing traction lately, which is events. You go to an event, and then you get suggested draft social posts that you can easily customize and share with your networks. Whereas right now, most of event organizers are just sending you an image in an email that you need to actually take, upload manually, and then create your own copy, right? So, and that generates engagement at scale. And we're actually taking this one step further with a new product launch that is happening this month, which is allowing users to then take their own pictures and overlay those with filters and overlays that the organization provides. So you take your own picture and then you overlay that with the filter of the organization or company. The next step being the app actually walking you through the process of creating your own video with guidelines that the organization or the company provides. So we're going much more into fully user-generated content with this.
Perfect. Last question. So you talk about partnership and integration, and you also talk about one of the big employee advocacy software vendors that do a lot of things. Do you see any use case for integration with other vendor in the space for social?
Absolutely. Yeah. So our goal is actually to become an infrastructure for social sharing, just like Stripe is an infrastructure for payments. Our biggest partnership to date is a partnership with PR Newswire and Cision, where our infrastructure basically allows PR managers who build press releases to embed toolkits in the format of those press releases. So think of us as a way to basically build an advanced social sharing option inside other apps. And when that is not possible, we've made our toolkits very easily embeddable in any email CRM, SMS sender, website builder, and so on through an HTML code or an iframe code. Going back to the initial premise, which is social sharing happens where community building happens. It doesn't make sense to gate social sharing in a designated app. You should pop the social sharing ask in the user flow. Once they signed up for an event, once they read a press release, once they donated to their favorite org, once they purchased the product in a shop and asking them to take a selfie of that and share it with their friends. So it's more around the flow of it and understanding that that social sharing is an outcome rather than a goal in its own.
I love the approach. Super happy to be the first to introduce you to the French market. Hope to see you soon for more presentation shortly. So thank you for this presentation, Tudor.